We have with us Jason Brodsky and Professor Chuck Freilich on that. Good evening to you, gentlemen. And this is quite fresh now from about an hour ago. A member of Iran's Revolutionary Guard has been charged in the U.S. in an attempted plot to murder John Bolton, who was National Security Advisor to former President Trump. Jason, your reaction to that?
It's great to be with you. Ambassador Bolton is a member of my organization's advisory board, so this hits close to home and is a very disturbing development. Iran clearly has been acting very brazenly, and we need to restore deterrence with the Islamic Republic. It has a history of undertaking assassination plots on U.S. soil back to 1980, and also with the attempted bombing of Cafe Milano in Georgetown over a decade ago. So this is a very serious development, and it's an indication that Iran is not just a nuclear file.
Yeah, Chuck, how do you see this?
Well, of course, it is a deeply disturbing event in and of itself. And as Jason was saying, it's not the first time that Iran has conducted totally unacceptable activities on American soil. But you have to say two things. First of all, they're not the only ones who've conducted assassinations. And more importantly, from our perspective, this won't really change anything. The Biden administration is committed to going back to the nuclear deal and will do so regardless of what happened here.
Okay, we'll talk about the deal later, but I want to ask you, Professor Freilich, about this cooperation between Russia and Iran. Does that put Iran in a more confrontational posture against the West and the U.S.?
Well, first of all, what we've been seeing here is that the war in Ukraine has served to drive Russia and Iran closer together. Both are deeply isolated, subject to broad international sanctions, and both are hurting militarily. But there's the unusual case where it's Iran supplying weapon systems to Russia. From our perspective, what this means is that in the future, if Iran helped Russia so importantly in its hour of need, well, may Russia lift whatever limitations there were on the types of weapons that it is willing to sell to Iran. Will they strengthen their cooperation in Syria? How will this affect, if at all, the positions that Russia takes on the nuclear negotiations? So this has a variety of strategic ramifications for Israel. It's very important, even if it's something that we're not directly involved in.
Right. Jason, how do you see this?
I agree with Professor Freilich. I don't think that the relationship between Iran and Russia is an alliance, but it's a deepening partnership. There are historical distrust among both countries, and right now they're also both competitors in the energy market, given the sanctions against them. But it is a disturbing development. This is right in Europe's backyard. I think Russia may feel emboldened now that the arms embargo on Iran under the UN Resolution 2231 is expired. Russia was very much in favor of that expiration in the original negotiations over the JCPOA. So that gives them an added incentive to pursue this course. And this is, these are disturbing trend lines.
Let's take it further, as Chuck implied. Will the Russians provide Iran some sort of a security umbrella down the road, Jason?
I think that is something to watch. I really do. What is Iran getting out of these, the use of its drones in Ukraine? What kind of compensation? And that could manifest itself in Syria. That could manifest itself with Russia taking, relieving any of the guardrails that it was using before in its attempt to maybe ship more advanced weaponry to Iran. And so these are definitely trend lines to watch.
Yeah, Chuck, what are the implications around the Middle East, like what's happening in Lebanon and in Syria, what's happening with Israel doing in Syria and so forth?
Well, it's true that there is no alliance between Russia and Iran, and there are important differences between them, but events are driving them closer together. There's a little bit of good news here, which is that until the war broke out in Ukraine, Russia was in the process of very much strengthening its position in the Middle East at the expense of the United States. Well, I think since their overall international position has probably been weakened considerably by the miscalculation, the misplay they made in Ukraine. That's probably true in our region as well, at least for the foreseeable future.
Right. I cannot let you go without talking about the nuclear negotiations, of course. Where are we now, Chuck?
Well, there was a flurry of optimism this week that this is it. We've finally reached the crunch, the turning point where Iran has to make a decision one way or the other. And at this point, I think it's unclear which way Iran will go. I think we, Israel, I think we, the United States, have to hope very much that Iran decides to go back to the deal for a variety of reasons, one of which, of course, is that there's really nothing else that's limiting Iran from going ahead and reaching the nuclear threshold at this point and preventing it from crossing it down the line. But I'd like to bring this home by asking our viewers to think for a minute what a future conflict between Israel and Hamas or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and even more so a future conflict between Israel and Hezbollah would look like if Iran had crossed the nuclear threshold or was capable of doing so at will. Look how careful, how restrained, how deterred Israel has been. For example, in the last round, we were afraid or deterred from Hamas coming into the fray, and we haven't attacked in Lebanon for years out of concern over the potential escalation. In Syria, we still do act freely. Now imagine, as I was saying, that Iran is at the threshold or has crossed it. I don't think we would do very much of anything when countries have gone nuclear. Other countries treat them with great caution. Take a look at the United States, a global superpower, and how very, very careful it is with anything that North Korea does. So we should hope that a deal is reached. Hope so very much.
Jason, I'm reading reports in Israel that the supreme leader is not interested.
Yes, I've been very skeptical that Iran at this juncture is interested in returning to the nuclear deal on reasonable terms. The debate within the Iranian system has changed since 2013 to 15, particularly in the Supreme National Security Council. And I think that the talks as a result can drag out a little further. We saw a variety of negative immediate reactions to the EU saying that it was a final text that was produced. The Iranians contest that. We saw IRNA, which was associated with the Raisi government, reject that. We saw i24NEWS, which was associated with the Supreme National Security Council, reject that as well. So I think it shows that the Iranians, this could drag out some more as long as the Iranians feel that they're pushing on an open door for more concessions.
Right. So in terms of timeline, we should look at what, September, Chuck?
Well, first, I think Jason is right that the Iranians have pushed back and have said this isn't the final text. Of course, that it's in their interest to do that and to try and keep this open for maybe not as long as possible, but for a while still, because they are achieving various things just by keeping it open.
Right.
I don't think they're pushing up against an open door. The United States has taken a firm position on some important issues.
Well, we'll have to stop here. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll take a break now.